My name's Frank Picone. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm the executive director of the Legacy Training Institute, which is part of Legacy Treatment Services, a large behavioral health care organization in New Jersey. Legacy Treatment Services is the product of a merger between DRENC, Behavioral Health Services, and the Children's Home. We're huge as a merged organization. We have 750 staff. We serve 150 teenagers. We serve over 3,000 adults every year. With regard to serving youth, we have foster care placements and residential treatment centers. Most people know them as group homes. And these are for youth that have been removed from their families because of a lot of behavioral problems, a lot of challenges, and mental health issues. And they're placed to live with us for 6 months, for a year, go to school with us. And our goal is to try to return them to their families in better shape than they came to us. We have a school with 100 students in them, and every one of our students has been kicked out of other schools in New Jersey. So they come in with a failure history. We have trained the staff, the teachers, the aides, the principal, the guidance counselor. Everyone in the school is trained in the Nurtured Heart and using it. Since we started using the Nurtured Heart approach, we've seen a decrease in turnover of staff. They're loving the approach. We've had about 86% of our youth make it through the placement and return home, which is it's an astronomical number. And the other thing that we're doing, we're just deciding that we want to use the Nurtured Heart as our organizational culture, not just for our clients, for our youth, but for the way our staff deal with each other and interact with each other. And as the director of the Legacy Training Institute, I feel like my job is to really develop from the time an employee is hired. They're trained in the Nurtured Heart and supported. The youth that come to our programs have long histories of a lot of failure and a lot of negative behavior, abuse, neglect. And when they come in, before the Nurtured Heart, our approach was to thoroughly examine and explore all of the pain and suffering and trauma that they've gone through, and really sit down with them and say, we're here to help you fix all these problems. I went to see Howard Glasser do a day-long training, and it just blew my mind and kind of turned my world upside down, because I started to realize that I had spent most of my time with the youth really establishing in our interactions all of their past portfolio of bad and troubling and failure experiences. And it just jived with my desire to focus on strengths, to focus on success. And what I want to do is say to them, there's the real you, the great you beneath that. The truth is that you have greatness in you. It's about helping them to see their successes in each current moment. We have continuing kids coming in and out. That's the other challenge we have. The kids that have been there a while realize that there's nothing to gain in terms of relational energy from staff by acting out. But the new kids that come in still have that history of getting connection around showing their failures and their negative behavior. So the new kids will come in and they'll watch the kids that have been there a while, the students in our school, and they'll be like confused. They'll act out. And as we're resetting them in the classroom, they're trying to get attention, and they will up the ante. They'll up the ante and start getting even more agitated because they want that connection. We're noticing that pretty quickly they begin to realize that they're getting tons of attention and recognition for cooperating, for showing their greatness, for participating, for being kind. They just want the energy and they just want the relationship. And that's what we're noticing is a difference. We're finding more kids are working harder to be great students and to do good things, because that's where the relationship is. It's a hard thing for staff, because a lot of staff show their love by having long lectures with kids about, come on, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this. And I just tell them, I love the love. Just let's have it flow when the child is showing their true greatness and not replaying their past portfolio of negative behaviors. When we began introducing it 4 years ago at the Children's Home, what we discovered was that we were basically kicking out students at a rate of maybe 4 or 5 a year. And when we implemented the Nurtured Heart, we made a commitment that we're never going to do that again. No matter what they do, and believe me, they really, really can up the ante. We went 4 years without one child being expelled from our school. We're noticing also that our in-school suspension room used to be packed with 6, 7, 8 kids. Now it's barely being used. It's really amazing because the kids are getting energized in class. The most substantial thing is we don't kick kids out anymore, which was a problem. More kids are staying in class, and our staff retention is getting much, much better. So I think staff are happier to devote their energy to celebrating success than to constantly be talking to the children about their failures. I come into the classrooms and observe. One thing that happened when I was in the class once, the teacher, about 10 minutes before the end of the class, said, Mr. Frank, would you like to talk to the class? So I said to the kids, Nurtured Heart is about the fact that you're all here because you've had trouble, and we tend to focus a little too much on the trouble. We really want to focus on the great qualities that you have, the greatness in you. Anyone who feels they have greatness, raise your hand. And a bunch of kids raised their hand except for one girl. So I said, what's your greatness, to one of the boys? And he said, I play basketball wonderfully. Another child said that I'm very funny. And I just was amazed at how they were so open to discussing it. And then I came to the girl who didn't raise her hand, and I said to her, I just want to ask you, did you not raise your hand because you're just shy? Or is it because you really believe you don't have any greatness in you? And she said, I don't have any greatness in me. And I thought, oh boy, now what do I say? But before I could speak, a little boy next to her said, that's not true. You have greatness in you. You sang the national anthem at our basketball game last week, and you have a beautiful voice. And the look on this girl's face when she heard her fellow student talk about her greatness, it was like watching a wilting flower just come to life. And then I'm thinking, I got to follow this up. But before I could say something, another boy said, and who wrote that poem that we put up on the board that you read last week? You write poetry so beautifully. And I was like, wow. And it made me realize that these kids are so used to hearing about what's wrong with them. And if you keep hearing about what's wrong with you, you keep living what's wrong with you. If somebody stops and sees your greatness and they're dying to hear about their greatness so that maybe they could live it. The foster care placements in New Jersey that the Drenk Center was running were having a problem. And the problem was that the parents that we have as foster parents were experiencing just, the child would be disrespectful or run away, and then they would call up the state and say, take them out, which is just unbelievably traumatizing for a youth to be bounced around, go to a foster home, and then be rejected again. At the Drenk Center, all of the foster parents are required, before a child can come into the home, to get Nurtured Heart training from a certified Nurtured Heart trainer. When they accepted a youth, every 6 months we would be coming in and kind of giving them a booster shot. And then every year they have to go through the training again. And when we had parents that weren't quite getting it, the therapist would go in there and work with them to try to make sure they were really living the approach. We saw like 30-40% turnover rates of children being removed go down to virtually none. And it was because the parents were not energizing negativity. They were trained to recognize everything positive. And that relationship enhancement created a connection that kind of decreased the acting out behavior. And then even when they were acting out, they were able to see good things that were happening. Like the child may have run away, but they called, and then they'll bring them back. So changing their spirit in the house really helped stabilize the house. And I think it just had phenomenal results in stabilizing the placements and getting the parents to focus on the positives. I think that one of the things that makes the Nurtured Heart difficult for some staff and some parents to really embrace is the fact that they have this notion that because there's a lot of bad, challenging behavior happening in the youth, they need to come down on them, they need to be tough with them. So when I begin talking about Nurtured Heart, sometimes I encounter resistance because they're saying, Nurtured Heart sounds like all you want me to do is pat them on the head. What do I do when they're acting out? What do I do when they're disrespectful? And one of the things that I talk about, I come right up front with, I believe the nurtured heart is the perfect balance of recognizing the strengths and the greatness, but also saying, I'm not going to put up with this. I'm not going to energize your tantrum. I'm not going to go on and on when I ask you to do something. So I tell parents that are really feeling like strictness and clarity is crucial, that this is your approach. Don't get lost on nurtured heart as if your child's going to curse you out and you're going to pat them on the head and say, nice, you really used a lot of interesting words. It's not like that. So I really look at my audience and I realize that they're besieged by violence and a lot of negative behavior, and I tell them this approach is going to give you the firmness and the clarity, and you're expending so much energy on when your child is being negative. How about we conserve that energy and just devote it to growing the greatness in your child? So I think you have to talk about the strictness of the approach. And I love the clarity and the strictness too. I'm appreciative that the leadership is supportive, because it's, staff don't always come with, I'm dying to learn this thing. Sometimes, and you have to package it a certain way. Like they're very much being besieged by negative behavior, and their old focus is punishment. And nurtured heart sounds like very soft, but we're getting it across, and we're excited. We've committed to getting 2 or 3 new trainers, nurtured heart certified trainers every year, and visiting the homes every month or so, and making sure it's happening in the houses, making sure the staff are energizing positive behaviors, setting limits, resetting, doing all of the things. Because one of the things I feel very strongly about is if you're going to introduce an approach, you can't just introduce it and then sit back. You have to nurture it, and you have to make sure it becomes part of the culture. And that's where we're at right now as an organization. And I see that as my primary role, to get the culture to truly live it, and not just come to a training once a year and then go back to the other ways that you used to operate. And I think the more we do it, the more potent the environment becomes, the more we reclaim these at-risk youth and help them redefine themselves as the great human beings that they are. It's really also an approach to bring out the greatness in you, the staff member, the parent. When you're working with kids that push your buttons, you sometimes get lost in the dialogue in your mind. I don't like you, or you're making me feel angry, or I want to counter-aggress. And we need to settle our spirit. And I think the nurtured heart really provides an opportunity for staff and parents to grow themselves. Most of the time, our kids and our staff are afraid to look at their shortcomings and show them to people, but nurtured heart creates an environment. So it's not just about good. It's also about there's things you got to work on, and it empowers you to do that. I give all the credit to the nurtured heart approach, because what the nurtured heart approach, the reason why it inspires me is because I believe it's about getting your focus when you're with kids or adults even on seeing the greatness before you and being able to honor that greatness. So it's an approach that resonates with me. I don't want to talk to people about their failures. I don't want to talk to kids about their long history of painful, traumatic events. I want to help them to see that how resilient they are, how great they are, and to every day help them to build a portfolio that is of greatness as opposed to a portfolio of failure.